when we're talking about stocks, right?
Right.
What are the common mistakes people do for get go?
When they start investing, I think the most common mistake is not having personal knowledge. You haven't educated yourself. Maybe your friend tells you to buy something. Maybe your neighbors tell you to buy something. Maybe the market's going up consistently as it did after COVID, and you feel a sense of FOMO. You fear missing
Hmm.
out, and you want to get exposed to the markets no matter what. That is the first mistake that people make, because out here two things can happen. Either you will make up end up making quite a bit of money, in which case you will develop a false sense of confidence that you know what you're doing, which can be horrible in the long run. Or you will absolutely get your hands burnt and you will shy away from the stock market in the future. Both of these situations are at the opposite ends of the spectrum, and we want to avoid it. We want to jump into these waters with knowledge of how we want to swim, right? So when we've educated ourselves, then we dip a toe into the waters of the stock market, because you see, the stock market is open every day, 5 days a week for life. It isn't
Hmm.
going anywhere as far as our efficient markets are operating. Therefore, it is never too late to start educating yourself and then exposing yourself to the markets. So, somebody who is initially learning, right? But they also want to be exposed. They have all this cash in the bank and they're like, no, man, I just want to pump it into the market. Then they can go for more passive instruments like index funds, which means now you have exposure to the market, but you are not actively picking stocks. You're buying an entire index, right? So you're
Hmm.
basically buying S&P 500. You're buying the top 500 companies of America and not one individual company, because the chances of all 500 companies failing is negligible, and the chances of your one individual stock underperforming is pretty high. So educate yourself, grab certain books, find a good mentor. There's such good content on YouTube today. I mean, it's never ending, and that's the first mistake people make, is to not be educated enough when they are getting exposed to the markets.
But I think it's really important to also get knowledge of right content. And I believe that there's so much content out there. And I think people get overwhelmed of, like, which video to look at, what base level of knowledge you should have. Um,
Right.
and that's where, like, I think researching on the right knowledge and investing with right brokers is also one of the key factors here.
Right, you. That is such a great point, actually, because I've been taking consultation calls. I've been guiding people get started. A lot of them tell me, Karan, we are ready to put in the work. We want to study. We don't want to gamble anymore. We're ready
Hmm.
to put in. We're ready to burn the midnight oil. Where do I begin? A simple YouTube search will give me millions of videos, and which is why I think I've been shortening their learning curve tremendously. There are a couple of authors which have done an incredible job, and you just gravitate towards them first, consume their literature, and then move on. For example, authors like William O'Neill, he's legendary, right? He wrote this book back in 1988, I reckon, and he only passed away the past year in 2023. He wrote this book called How to Make Money in Stocks. It's fairly simple, it's easy to understand, and it discusses stocks in a way which has never been discussed before.
Hmm.
Essentially, he talks about demand and supply psychology. If you look at a chart of a stock, you want to find out whether the stock is being accumulated, or whether there's no interest in it, or whether it's being distributed. Naturally, when it's being accumulated by institutional money, that's when you want to buy the stock, because this is a stock that is going to show some tremendous moves in the future, or in the words of fundamental investors, it's going to be a multi-bagger. So you have William O'Neill, who's done a marvelous job. A person I highly recommend people read his books is Nicholas Darvas. He wrote this book called How I Made $2 Million in the Market. And $2 million was a princely sum back in 1961 when he made this money. And he also wrote this book. The interesting thing about this gentleman is that he wasn't a full time trader. So he wasn't in front of the screen. I mean, the screens didn't even exist back then in 1961. He was a
Right.
full time, internationally renowned dancer. He would travel the world. And what his broker would do is, at the end of every closing day in the United States, his broker would fax him the closing prices of stocks, whatever he was tracking. So manually, he would plot charts on a graph paper and undertake that exercise. and he ended up making $2 million in the stock market, which is a brilliant point to state that you don't have to be a full-time trader. You don't have to be in front of a screen. You can work your ordinary normal job, whatever you do, no matter if you're a doctor, lawyer, that doesn't matter. But even if you give it 15 minutes a day and some significant time over the weekends, you can make tremendous amounts of money in the stock market. And thirdly, there's this author called Mark Minervini. He is
Mm-hmm.
legendary. He's a two-time US investing champion, in fact, right?
Oh,
And
wow.
he's written three books. One is basically about fundamental analysis. The second one, which is in 2016, Think and Trade Like a Champion. This is mostly concerned with technicals. And the 2017 book, which is Mindset Secrets for Winning. This is highly recommended to not only traders but anybody who wants to super perform, because almost everything super performance is a mindset game. Michael Phelps has spoken of it. Kobe Bryant has spoken of it. Legendary traders are speaking of it. So this is something that's going to help you in life as well. And this is one book I think you should just grab already and read it cover to cover. It's honestly changed my life, because you see, in trading, if you lose money, you not only face financial losses, but you also face massive emotional losses. And that's one thing we don't want to do in life, is to lose morale and confidence. Never do
Yeah.
we want to make a certain bet that means that we are always going to be scared of the stock market. Which brings me to a brilliant point. We never want to make ruinous choices in the market. If we make a bet, which means either we could be a billionaire tomorrow or a pauper, that bet is not worth it, because the risk reward is just not okay. In life, the analogy is we never want to make a bet or make a choice or a decision which means either we lose our health or our freedom. We don't want to land up in the hospital, and we don't want to land up in prison. And this is an analogy that you can use in trading as well. And I think if you are keen on becoming an excellent trader, you eventually become a more disciplined man as well, which is great.